She's just not mine. I never asked to raise someone else's child. It's not like I ever bonded with her. That was my mother's voice. Calm, distant, like she was talking about a neighbor's dog or a dress she never liked. I was 16 when I heard her say it, sitting alone in the hallway, knees pulled to my chest, listening to a conversation that would change everything I thought I knew about family. There was a long pause on the phone line. Then her voice again, light and casual. She'll grow up and leave like the rest. It's easier if I don't get too attached. My name is Vanessa, and I'm 31 now. But that night, that was the night I stopped being someone's daughter. They say you never forget your 16th birthday. I wish I could. I remember the smell of vanilla frosting, from the cake I baked myself, the streamers I taped to the ceiling, balloons, clinging to the walls like they were trying to escape the silence. I waited and waited. I had sent the invitations. I had even begged my mom to remind people, just in case. She gave me a tired look and muttered, "Don't expect too much, okay?" At the time, I thought she meant well, that she didn't want me to be disappointed. But when the clock hit 7 p.m. and no one had come, not even her, I realized she wasn't trying to protect me from disappointment. She was the disappointment. I sat at the table, a paper crown on my head, pretending the empty chairs were filled. I whispered jokes into the air, laughed at stories I made up just to feel less alone. And when I heard those words from her mouth, "She's just not mine," it didn't sting. It branded me. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just watched the candles melt down on my untouched cake. Even at 16, I understood something most people never do. Sometimes, the person who's supposed to love you unconditionally just doesn't. It's been 15 years since that night. I built a life far from that house, and far from the woman who lived inside it. I put myself through school, built a career, made something out of the ashes she left behind. People see me now and say I'm strong, confident, unshakable. But what they don't see is the 16-year-old girl still sitting at that table, still waiting to be seen. I thought I had buried that part of me for good. Until last week. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent me a text. "Did you hear? Your mom's throwing a huge party for her 60th. Black tie. Fancy venue. Your sister's helping plan everything." There was no invitation. Of course there wasn't. But something in me shifted. Not anger, not sadness. Just a quiet, stubborn flicker of curiosity. "Go," a voice whispered, not to fight, not to beg, not even to be forgiven, just to see. Maybe she changed. Maybe this was her way of making amends, of welcoming me back into a story I'd been written out of. Or maybe it was just another chapter in the same old book. But this time, I'm not 16, and I'm not walking in empty-handed. 3 days before the party, I stood at the bottom of the steps I hadn't climbed in over a decade. The house hadn't changed. Same pale blue paint, flaking at the corners. Same wind chime by the door. The one I used to watch sway while waiting. For someone, anyone, to remember I existed. I wasn't here to beg. I wasn't here to reclaim something. I had hope. A small, pitiful ember of it, but it burned anyway. In my hands, I held a box. Wrapped in cream paper, tied with a simple navy ribbon. Inside was a brooch I had found in a vintage boutique. Delicate, timeless. Exactly the kind my mother used to admire in shop windows, but never bought. I wanted to give it to her. In person. Just say, "Happy birthday." And leave, simple, clean, dignified. I walked up the porch and knocked. At first, nothing. Then the door creaked open. And there she was. My sister. Her expression didn't shift. Just an immediate look of disdain? Boredom? I never could tell. The difference with her. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed like she was guarding a castle. "Well," she said, eyes skimming over me like I was something stuck to the welcome mat. "This is unexpected." I didn't take the bait, just held up the gift slightly, offered a small smile. "Is Mom home?" She didn't move. "Why?" Before I could answer, a familiar voice floated in behind her. Calm, cold, hollow. I am. And then my mother appeared. Perfectly made up, dressed in ivory, pearls around her neck like always. Her smile was brittle, like glass stretched too thin. She looked at me the way someone might look at a guest who overstayed their welcome at a funeral. I didn't know you were in town, she said. Not warm, not even curious, just factual. I held the gift out. I heard about your birthday. I just wanted to drop this off. Wish you well. Her eyes flicked to the box, then back to me. Her smile tightened. You shouldn't have come. I blinked. It's just a small gift. I won't stay. She cut me off. This weekend is for family. The words landed like ice in my stomach. I stayed still. My hand didn't lower. She took a breath. The next line was delivered like a closing statement in court. Rehearsed. And final. You're not invited. You were a guest in this house once. That's all. There it was. The line between me and them, burned into the ground like a warning sign. I looked at my sister. She didn't flinch. In fact, her lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. Don't embarrass yourself, she said softly. Just go. No raised voices, no slammed doors, no dramatic scene, just rejection, calmly plated and served, like they'd been waiting years to feed it to me. I stood there for a moment longer, maybe to give them one last chance to take it back, maybe to feel something, but there was nothing left to feel. The door closed, slowly, purposefully. The wind picked up, the ribbon on the box fluttered against my wrist, and just like that I was alone again, like I had been on my 16th birthday. Standing on the outside of a life I was never allowed to be part of, but this time, I didn't cry. I looked at the gift in my hands, then at the house, and I smiled, not out of peace, not out of forgiveness, but because something inside me, something sharp, finally woke up. They thought I was still that girl begging to be loved. They forgot who I became. I turned and walked down those steps one last time, and in that moment, I made a decision. Quiet, clean, and final. If they didn't want me at the party, then they'd just have to celebrate on my terms. I sat in my car for a long time, the gift still in my lap, ribbon fluttering like it was trying to escape the silence. I don't know how long I stared at that door, or how many times I replayed her voice in my head. You were a guest in this house once, not daughter, not family, just a temporary visitor, like I was a stray someone forgot to return. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way it used to. There were no tears this time, no begging the universe for a reason, no collapsing into heartbreak, just stillness. Like the calm before a storm that doesn't just blow in, it chooses its path. I took a deep breath, reached over and unlocked my glove box. Inside was my old phone, the one I hadn't touched in years. I kept it for one reason. It had access to a backup email account I rarely opened. The moment I logged in, I saw it, the email from my late father's attorney. Subject: Family trust details. Requires signature. At the time, I had ignored it. I didn't want anything from them, not even money. I wanted distance. I wanted silence. But now I read it carefully. My father, biological or not, I'll never know, had set up a retirement trust for my mother, a significant one. But there was a condition. It could only be released with the approval of both daughters. My name, my signature, my consent, and suddenly, everything shifted. They could pretend I didn't exist. They could slam doors, erase photos, twist stories, but they couldn't unlock that trust without me. I held something they needed more than their pride, and they had no idea. My lips curled into something between a grin and a warning. If they wanted to pretend I didn't belong, then maybe it was time to remind them who they were dealing with. I tapped the screen, found the contact info for the party planner. Polite voice, pleasant tone, a little frazzled. I asked how the planning was going. Oh, we had to scale things down a bit. Budget's tighter than expected. Your sister mentioned cutting one of the live musicians and reducing the floral budget. I smiled. What if money wasn't an issue? There was a pause. I'm sorry? I'd like to sponsor the event, I said calmly. Anonymously, I could practically hear the planner's mouth drop open. Oh, well, that's generous. But may I ask why? I have my reasons, I replied. One condition. I want control over the tribute video. Just that. Another pause. Then, I don't see a problem with that. Of course she didn't, because in their world, I was invisible, powerless, just a ghost outside the family photo. But now I was the one paying for their fairy tale. And I was about to write the final chapter. I looked down at the gift in my lap. It wasn't mine to give anymore. I rolled down the window and set the box gently on the curb. The wind took the ribbon first, then the paper. I watched as it blew down the street, light, directionless, easily forgotten, just like me, until now. The night of the party arrived like a perfectly rehearsed lie. The venue was breathtaking, far more elegant than anything the invitations had promised. Floor-length drapes in champagne silk shimmered under golden chandeliers. Fresh orchids lined every table. A string quartet played in the background, their sound soft and expensive. No one questioned the upgrade. They just assumed my mother had spared no expense. That, of course, the woman who demanded perfection had finally given herself the celebration she thought she always deserved. She floated through the room like a queen at court, smiling, laughing, accepting praise with modest nods and fake humility. You did all this? Someone asked her. She smiled sweetly. Well, I believe special moments deserve special effort. She never mentioned the anonymous donor, never once gave credit to the daughter she swore didn't belong. Of course she didn't. To admit she hadn't done it herself would be to admit there was someone else behind the curtain, someone she wanted forgotten. I watched from the shadows, unseen but present. I didn't come to mingle. I didn't come to make a scene. I came to make a statement. I watched them all, the guests, the neighbors, the distant cousins, all dressed to impress, clinking glasses and sipping champagne I paid for, and not one of them knew what was coming. Tuck your sauce. Tension hung in the air like humidity before a lightning strike. They just didn't know the storm had already started. As the night moved on, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd as the MC stepped forward, tapping his mic. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to cake and dancing, we have a special surprise. A tribute to our lovely guest of honor. 60 beautiful years of life, laughter, and love. Applause echoed through the ballroom. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin, already emotional. The screen came to life. Soft piano music played. Childhood photos of my mother filled the screen, black and white snapshots of simpler times. Her first birthday, her graduation, her wedding day. Guests cooed. My sister whispered something proud into a friend's ear. Then came the photos of her daughters. Or rather, daughter. My sister on her first day of school. My sister at her piano recital. My sister holding up her college acceptance letter. And then, the shift. The music stopped. A single image filled the screen. Blurry. Unedited. It was me. 7 years old. Sitting alone at a plastic table. No cake, no balloons, no family. Just me. Looking straight into the camera, eyes wide, smile unsure, like I was still waiting for someone to arrive. The room fell silent. Another photo. Me again. This time older, standing at the edge of a family group photo, cut off, barely included. My mother's arm around my sister. I was always 2 inches out of frame. More photos came. A pattern of absence, of neglect, of erasure. The music resumed, but not the piano. This time it was colder, minimal, distant. A soft melody that made your throat tighten. Then came the final slide, white text on a black screen. Happy 60th birthday, Mom. From the daughter you said didn't deserve to be here. And the one who paid for everything you're enjoying tonight. Gasps. A chair scraped against the floor. Someone whispered, Wait. What? All eyes turned to my mother. She froze, hands clutching her napkin like it could shield her, and I stepped forward from the shadows, not to confront, not to scream, just to be seen, finally, on my terms, because this wasn't just a party, it was a reckoning. The screen went black, but the silence in the room didn't fade with it. It deepened, like everyone had collectively forgotten how to breathe. People stared. Some glanced at each other, unsure whether to applaud or apologize with their eyes. My mother didn't move at first, then slowly her hands lowered from her face, her mouth parted, and the mask cracked. "You think this is clever?" she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "You think humiliating me in front of my friends is some kind of victory?" She stood up, fast, her chair screeching across the floor. Eyes now on me, sharp, shining with fury. "You've always been a problem, always needed attention. You couldn't handle being second best, so you staged a tantrum like a child." She took a step forward. "Fine. Say what you want, but don't pretend this is about love. It's about money, isn't it? That's why you came. You're jealous. You're bitter. You're still the same pathetic outsider you've always been." A few guests gasped. One man tried to pull her back gently by the arm. She yanked away. I didn't flinch. I let her rant. Let her unravel, thread by thread, right in front of the people she'd tried so hard to impress. And when she finally ran out of steam, when the room had fully collapsed into discomfort, I reached into my clutch and tapped my phone screen. The speaker clicked on. My voice didn't come through. Hers did, crackly but clear, recorded, time-stamped. "She hasn't signed the release yet?" My sister's voice followed. "Not yet, but I think I can get her to." My mother again, low and cold. "If she signs the trust release, we'll finally get the money. Just let her feel like she belongs for one day. One day. That's all I need." And then silence. You could hear it, that moment of recognition in her eyes, her own words, her own trap. The crowd turned. Some backed away. Some just stared. The string quartet had stopped playing. One of the servers froze mid-pour with a bottle of champagne. My mother opened her mouth again, but no words came this time. Just panic. I stepped forward. Just enough for my voice to carry. No anger, no shouting, just truth. "You didn't invite me here to celebrate. You used me. You needed something I had. And you thought I was still desperate enough to trade dignity. For crumbs." I looked around, met their eyes, each of them. "But you were wrong." She reached for a response. A comeback. Anything. But by then, the damage was done. She had exposed herself, and all I had done was press play. The room had never been so quiet. No music, no laughter, just the sound of breath being held and reputations unraveling. My mother stood frozen, eyes wild, mouth parted like she still thought she could spin the story back into her favor. But she was out of rope, and everyone knew it. She took a step toward me, voice small now. "Don't do this to me," she whispered, like she was the victim, like all those years of silence, exclusion, erasure, like they were mine to forget just because she was finally the one feeling exposed. I didn't move for a moment, just studied her. Then slowly, I stepped forward and placed the unopened gift box at her feet. Still pristine, still perfect. "Don't worry," I said quietly. "I didn't do this to you." I looked around the room, the guests who had applauded. Her, pitied me, whispered when I showed up. "I gave you the celebration you wanted. I paid for the flowers, the food, the dress, the band. I even gave you the attention you always craved." Then I met her eyes again. All I did was remind everyone who really paid for it. And with that, I turned. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the door to open this time. And this time, I was the one walking out. The crowd parted like water. No one dared stop me, because for the first time in my life, they finally knew who I was.